Hello, welcome everyone. We're here today with Mickt Flior, and if you want to learn how to go from sketch to 3D art in Adobe Illustrator, hang out with us. It's going to be a great time. Hi, Mickt. How are you doing this morning, afternoon, evening, depending on when our audience is watching?
For me, it's afternoon and it's great. I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm super excited.
Perfect. And I do want to look over here and say hi to chat. Hello, chat. I know looking here makes me feel, but you're hanging out over here with me. So if you ever have questions during this is a live stream. Adobe Live is live every single day from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., hanging out with you, helping you level up your creative careers. We do have someone new in the chat that I want to call out. Hi, Keys. Nice to see you. Thanks for watching with us. We're going to be hanging out. And as always, it is live. This is live. Right now, it is 10 a.m. 2/16, 2024. I can't prove it to you. My calendar literally says it's the 1st of February still, but I swear it's live. So tune in, ask your questions because we are going to be live the whole time. Let's hop into Adobe Illustrator with Mickt. And actually, let's look at a little bit of your work. Let's have you intro, tell our audience, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
I am Mickt Flior and I am an illustrator and designer. I'm originally from Brazil in Rio, but I am based in the US right now. So yeah, it's afternoon for me because I'm in North Carolina. And I am actually from UX design, and I am right now slowly going back to graphic design slash illustration because it's always been a passion of mine ever since I was a kid. As the oldest story, everybody starts drawing when they're a kid, and that's how it starts. And then you never get that out of your head, and you're like, will I one day work with that? And yeah, that's what I'm doing right now, and I'm having a lot of fun doing that.
I love that. I love that it's just like I'm gonna scribble until it's a career. Like I love that take of like I don't know, it's kind of fun, and then eventually it's a job. So let's go ahead and hop onto your screen, and if you want to show off some of your work, I love your aesthetic. It is
Absolutely.
fun, bubbly.
Yeah.
Can you describe kind of your aesthetic visually, and also scroll all the way up so that people can know where to find you? Um,
Yeah.
right there.
So yeah, this is my Instagram. If you want to follow me, see my work there. This is where I post most of the stuff. So in my website and my Behance is mostly the professional stuff, complete projects. And here I just throw everything at it. So you guys can see even the stuff that's not finished. And yeah, my style is mostly bubbly, wonky, funky, groovy, like hand drawn, imperfect on purpose. And I am gonna be making some 3D lettering with you guys today. We're gonna attempt to recreate this piece that I did on Illustrator, and we're just gonna start with a sketch, just a few lines on paper, and then we're gonna make it look like that. I promise. It works.
Yes.
It's
And chat,
it's like magic.
we do have a gift for you, chat. If you want to scroll down right below us in the description, there is a link, and that link contains a source file for you to work along with us. We're going to start on the same source file. It's got a little sketch in there. So if you want to learn along with us over the next hour, download the source file, open Illustrator right now, and you can follow along step by step so that you can create a beautiful piece. No, dang it, a beautiful piece like the one that you see here. Camera's mirrored, it always throws me off. All right, so Mickt, let's go ahead and hop into Illustrator, and hopefully everyone has
Yeah.
downloaded that file. Where are we starting? Where are we going? Let's get into it.
All right, so I'm gonna start as if I didn't have the source file, just so you can apply it to your own sketches. So I'm gonna create a new file, and the size that I used for this was 1380 pixels by 1380 pixels. So we don't need to make a really big canvas because it's a digital piece and we're gonna be using 3D, so that kind of make things slower, and having a board that's not super huge kind of helps with that. I'm gonna do my After Effects at 150 just because I want to see the extra detail and make sure it's
Yes.
RGB. And I'm gonna call it be mine because
Always
that's
name your files.
yeah. I always name your files, and I'm gonna create it.
And a quick question for you that may come up in the chat. Why are we working in RGB? What is RGB? Why not one of the other options? Why are we choosing that?
Well, I always think of the purpose of the piece that I'm creating, and most of the work I create right now is for the digital world. So it's for the internet, so we use RGB. If we're doing something for print, we will be using CMYK, or if it's something really specific, you might want to go Pantone, and that's more complicated. But if you're working digitally, just do RGB.
Yep, RGB is the most versatile too. So if you're ever wondering what you need, chat, just do RGB, and then someone will ask you for CMYK if they need it. Okay, so we're in Illustrator. We're here. Where are we starting? It's often very scary to have the blank artboard. Let's get started together.
So I'm gonna source my my little sketch from my file here, and that's usually how I work. I just drag and drop, and it arrives on Illustrator really big. So I just click this button up here that embeds my file. So my file is always on my Illustrator file. My sketch file is always with my Illustrator file. Even if I change the location, if I delete my sketch, it's always here. So I always do that. And then I'm gonna call it sketch. Let's just name this.
Oh, we're naming layers in Illustrator. I am
a
serial.
Try to be nice for you guys.
Oh yeah. I love that.
I'm trying hard.
She's ready.
And we're gonna save it. So just click Command S, and let's just hit save. You already named it, so the name was already there. And then just click OK. I usually just save things on desktop in the beginning if I don't want to think where I'm going to put it, or if it's just experimentation, and then I put it in the right place later.
Yes.
So if your workspace doesn't look like mine, you can change that here. You can see I have several workspaces here that I created throughout my life. But basically for this project, what we're going to be using is the layers, align, pathfinder, and 3D and materials. And you can find all of them under your window. Let me see if I can grab it here. So if you go window, you're going to find align, you're going to find 3D and materials, and it has a check mark because mine is already present there on my workspace. You're going to find layers, and you're going to find pathfinder.
I love that we're covering like how to set up a workspace, because we don't talk about this very often on Adobe Live. It is very helpful to set up custom workspaces depending on what you're working on. And I love that your workflow is very obvious, a lot of 3D, and that you have a custom workspace that has those tools front and center for you so that you can work more efficiently the way that you like to work.
Yeah, so also appearance is really important. Appearance, it's going to show this little window right here. So if you don't have this, I don't know what to call this little top thing here, front and center, just go window appearance, and it's going to give it to you on this side window. And then you can change stroke and fill and all that good stuff. And then after you do that, you can just click new workspace, and it's going to allow you to save that workspace that you just created. So let's call it workspace. Example number 5.
Yes, that's it.
That's how many I have. All right. So now it's saved. And even if you switch to something else, well, they're pretty much the same workspace. So let's switch it. You see how it changed? And you go back to what we just created. It's here. It's saved on your Illustrator. It doesn't matter where you go. So yeah. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to transform this little sketch that I did into something digital. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call it guide, because I am going to create a guide with my ellipse tool.
Yes, and I love that in Illustrator, if you're ever working with simple shapes, you're ever building stuff like this, what you put on the artboard doesn't have to be your final art. I know so many designers work with shapes and lines and pen tool just to map things out. And I love that we're putting it on its own layer so that we can have all that stuff there. And then once we build it, kind of be like, oh, we don't need that anymore. And we don't have to delete it. We can just turn that layer off. So easy.
Yeah, and that's the whole purpose of having different layers to have their names. I don't always do that, but I advise people to actually do that. You know, don't do what I say, don't do what I do.
Yes, and throughout
Um,
the stream, we will be doing a lot of polls, chat, because we want to know how you work. And so there is a poll right now on YouTube. The moderator is going to drop it in chat if you want to, or if you're over on Behance. But on YouTube, we are doing a poll, and we're wanting to know, chat, do you name your layers? Yes, no, or sometimes. Go vote in the poll and let us know, and we'll check in on those results in about 5 minutes.
I always name my layers something that doesn't make sense. So I guess that's a yes. I name my
Yeah, a
layers.
yes with a question mark.
Yeah. So I created a new layer. I locked my guide layer because it's just to make sure that when I vectorize this type, it's in a perfect circle shape. A lot of my work right now is putting hand lettering into crazy shapes. So I create a shape before I create my lettering. And this is what this is for. It's to help us make sure that the shape is there. So we have an idea of like a plan for our hand lettering. So with the outline layer, we're just gonna get our pen tool and we're gonna start vectorizing like this. Very basic stuff.
Yep.
Just click, click, click.
And you have your smart guides on, it looks like, and the smart guides will help you lock in to where like those intersections are happening with the circle. It's going to just help you keep things a little more cohesive. It will lock in angles. It can lock in alignment to different anchor points. So make sure you have that turned on. It is in view guides, and you can turn on smart guides. And Mickt, a lot of people, I think, get stressed by pen tool, and it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? How did you learn pen tool? Do you have any advice for people that are trying to learn it?
Practice.
Yes.
I think practice. At some point, practice makes perfect. I'm not there yet, but that doesn't really matter with the work I'm doing specifically because I'm really focused on things that look unique and hand drawn, even if they're vectorized. So the wonkiness that making it not perfect, making it not perfectly geometric all the time is a big part of it. And I think a big thing is to just know where to put your points.
Yep.
Your little anchor points. That can really help you or disturb your life as a designer.
Yes, and if you are trying to, as you do this, I'm going to try to explain pen tool a little bit while you get through your anchor point. So the pen tool, I like to think of it as a roller coaster. So chat, if you are scared about the pen tool, you don't understand how it works, think about it as a roller coaster. So you're saying, I want my roller coaster to start here and end here, and I want it to have this much momentum, right? So when you click and drag out to the right, you're just saying how fast that launch is going to be. And so if you think about a roller coaster, we start on one place and then we're going up the hill, but we're going fast. And so you get that little curve. And then from the hill, you're going down. And then that momentum carries over. So just think of it as you're constantly having your car on the roller coaster, continuing along the path, and you need to make sure that it keeps getting pushed over. So if you ever get stressed or you don't understand why anchor point is doing something, just think about it as, where's my roller coaster? Is it stopping? Does it have enough power to make it over this next hill? And that will help you how far you drag out your anchor points back and forth.
I love that analogy. Even though I'm still gonna make mistakes.
Yeah, and that's usually fine. The pen tool actually can be pretty forgiving if you understand, again, you're just doing the topmost, bottommost, leftmost, and rightmost points. Just look for those places where your path is going up, down, left, or right, and those are where your roller coaster points will hit.
And I feel like that's what I'm doing here because I've been doing this kind of letters for a while. So I've learned that if I place the points on the tiny curves, it's gonna make me have a shape with the least amount of points possible.
Yes.
And that makes our file not so big in terms of size.
And chat has voted, do we name our layers? 66% of chat names their layers. That is a very surprising number. 33% sometimes, and 0% say no. I wish I could vote in the poll because I would be the only one. I have never named a layer in Illustrator.
Is it because they're naming it like
yes.
pressing random letters? Because that's what So now you see that we have our basic shapes. And I'm not gonna do the E again, and I'm not gonna do this little thing again because it's the same thing as the other. So I'm just gonna copy after I smooth some lines. So let me just oops. Yeah. So let me just smooth the lines where I see that it could look better. I just like doing it all at once instead of being too focused on making one letter perfect and then forgetting that I have to do I don't know how many others.
Right?
I think just helps the process. I like my little bean here, my little E. Now looks better.
Yep. And
Um,
again, if we're thinking about that roller coaster, you see that little curve that happened to where it was kind of hitting and had a little bit of joint. That's where the track breaks, right? That's where the roller coaster gets stuck and stopped. And so we need to make sure that smooths out by giving it a little more momentum. And so that's why we're kind of
yeah.
dragging out those handles to give it a little more power so that it can make it over that curve or that hill.
Yeah, and it doesn't bother me that things aren't perfect. I kind of don't want them perfect, to be
Yep.
honest. I just don't want them to be pointy when they're not
Yes.
supposed to be pointy. So that's what I'm looking for right now. Like for example, here, and Illustrator would really like help us with this. You can see this little dot here. If you click, it's gonna smooth the lines for you. So this is a revolution. When first time I saw that, I still remember that moment.
Yes. And
It really helped me out.
we are using the direct selection tool. So if you haven't used Illustrator or you're not familiar with the basic tools, the black arrow on the top of your toolbar is the selection tool that will select the
Right
entire
here.
object, the entire stroke. If you use the white one, it is just the anchor points and the handles, which is what we're doing here to get really fine precision.
Yeah, and I just switch between them. And I'm making sure that the edges of my lettering are touching the lines that I set as the guide for my shape. So it really forms a circle,
Yep.
even if my sketch was not doing that. And that's why the sketch is just a sketch. So let me resize my little bean. Perfect. And now I'm gonna just copy and paste. And I'm gonna do, I think it's right click and reflect and vertical. And now I have the same thing, the same shape. So if I
Yes.
turn this off here, I can see there's like too much space between those two elements and there's less space here. So I like to remove the sketch sometimes and just see if things are aligned. That's a good exercise to check your white space. So I always make sure my canvas is like tiny and I look at it. Does it look like things are touching and they're not supposed to look like they're touching? I think that just helps. So I'm just gonna make these little guys here more pointy. So it brings more balance. It brings more balance to your composition. That's really the objective with this. Um, yeah, let me turn off my guides here. Yeah, we can make this guy more round. Okay, and now we're gonna do our two other elements, and those are supposed to be candy. So this is that hard candy that's like red and white. And this is a little chocolate heart with little alien eyes. So I'm gonna vectorize them too.
Yes.
And
And what's our vibe on creating vectors for the little twisty candy?
so I'm using the ellipse tool to make the perfect circle, and that's the only thing I want to be perfect. I'm gonna be making these little waves by hand pretty much, because I don't want them to be perfect. So you see I have a marker here that shows me the center,
Yep.
and then I'm gonna be making the waves and making sure it goes outside. And I'm just gonna copy and paste this a few times so I can preview where I'm gonna be placing them, but I don't want it to be like equidistant or anything like that. I wanted to have some kind of, oh, one is a little bit bigger than the other. I feel like those are the things that make it unique. And let me make just one more.
And chat, I'm dropping a link into the chat for you. If you want to get a different way to make a little peppermint swirl, there is a daily creative, or I guess weekly creative challenge now, that helps you create this effect using effects. So there's no wrong
Yeah.
way to do things, but I just thought of a different way to do that, and I knew that there was a video for it. So chat, that link is in the chat if you want to check that out another time. It is an overview of all of the effects that you can use in Illustrator, and one of those is a twist to create a nice little peppermint twist.
Yeah. I might have watched that video, by the way. I just am very stubborn.
Yeah, and I love that everyone has their own workflows. That's what I love about Adobe Live is watching workflows and learning things because you're like, oh, this is the right way to do it, and I always do it this way. And then you see someone do something, and you're like, I've been doing it wrong this whole time. Like that's such a unique workflow.
Yeah. And as long as you can make it fast enough to,
Yes.
accomplish what you need to accomplish, it doesn't really matter. I think when I was a beginner, I was really, really like worried about the right way of doing things, about learning all the shortcuts. And then he updates the software and the shortcuts change. And
Yes.
then you have to learn it again. So I'm just trying to organically just focus on where things are. So like if I need something, if I need like if I need to change my object, I'll go to the object, tab here up top. And then that way I learn where things are by not just memorizing, I guess,
Yep.
because things are named for a reason, right? They are called what they are called for a reason. And if you just think through that process, it's not so scary after a while. And I'm gonna be making the little mouth like that.
Oh, just a little
And
smile.
yeah, so now I'm gonna remove the sketch. And this is what I have, right? It looks kind of imperfect, but that's what I want.
But it's
So
fun, yeah.
yeah, it's fun. It's supposed to be like that because you're working from a sketch. So that's what I want to teach you, that it's possible to do
Yep. And
stuff
chat, if
that
you want to
looks really
work
good.
Yeah, if you want to work in your own sketches, you totally can. But if you want to follow us along and you're just joining us, there is a link down below us to a source file that has some places for you to get started and do these workflows. Now, if you're familiar with the pen tool, you're familiar with Illustrator, you're like, great, I can like outline these sketches in no time. We're going to show you how to level up these sketches into a full 3D render. And we've been about 15 minutes of work time creating our shapes, and we're going to do the 3D so fast. It's so easy to do the 3D,
It's really
and then we're
easy,
going to show
yeah.
you how to refine, how to experiment with different textures, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you stick around for the rest of the stream because we are going to get all kinds of three-dimensional.
Yeah, so now what I'm gonna do is I am gonna use the Pathfinder tool to create the shapes for this little guy. And I want to show you how to do that. Is we're gonna select all the little twirls, how you called it, and my little disc in the center. And we're gonna fill it with the color. Doesn't really matter. We're gonna remove the stroke, and we're just gonna go to our Pathfinder window and click Unite. It's the first little square that you see.
Yes. And chat, if you want a quick hotkey to get rid of the stroke on a object, you can hit the / button. So right underneath the question mark down in the bottom right next to
Mm-hmm.
shift, you can hit that and it will take the stroke or the fill off of the shape that's selected, depending on which one is in front.
Yeah, so let me just use the candy colors to get in the vibe of, in the spirit of what I'm doing here. I'm trying to
Mhm.
do a off-white for the background, and I'm just gonna select both of the objects, and I am gonna divide them. And when I divide, it groups everything, so I hit ungroup, and then I just cut. And it not only cut the extra thing that was hanging outside, but he also made sure that those two shapes complement each other. And that's what we're
Oh,
gonna need for the 3D part.
yep, that's funny. I wondered why you're doing it that way and not using a shape builder or not using the subtract. And it's because you want them all as individual pieces because the 3D effect applies differently to individual pieces than it would to having a cutout shape. That's really interesting workflow. I was very curious. I was like, why are we
Yeah,
doing it this way? And it's for the 3D.
yeah, it's for the 3D. So we're gonna do the same thing for the letter B. Let me just put some color, and let me just make the, nope. Let me just make the, I don't know, that happens sometimes.
Right.
So now I'm selecting all of the items and I am gonna do minus front, which removes those little two circles that we put here. And now if I drag it, it's just, it's hollow.
Yep.
So
And
we
what
don't
we've
need to
done there
worry.
is basically create a compound path. And the way I like to think about that is you have a wall that is your shape and you're installing a window. So you're technically cutting a hole in the wall and putting something that you can see through. And it's one shape that you have on top is the window, the bottom shape is the wall, and you're smacking a window into the wall.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. Yeah. So now I'm gonna think about colors really quickly here. When I'm working with pieces that are related to a celebration date, they usually have their brand colors, right? They usually have their colors that people easily associate with those dates. And since we're doing something for Valentine's Day, we have red and pink, shades of red and pink. Those are, let's say, brand colors for this holiday. So I know I want to use red because I'm doing this candy and I want people to recognize that it's this candy. So I'm just going to use red again here for these letters, and I'm going to do each letter a different color because these are balloons and you get them individually and they can be whatever color you want. So I'm going to just copy the same color. I just clicked the eyedrop here, and that copies the color of a different element. So just point and click, and it's copying the red. And now for the other letters, I am gonna do a pink because that's also a traditional color of Valentine's Day. Mm, let me
It's
do,
so fun.
yeah, it's fun. And if I choose a color that's like not too light, it works. But if I choose a color that's like too light, it's really hard for you to read, right? The words. You kind of see the B, the I, and the E before you see the rest because there's more contrast between the background and that color. So I want to make sure that if I'm doing two letters of different colors in the same word, that they kind of have the same level of, I guess, contrast in
Yep.
comparison with the background that you have. I'm gonna call it
Yep.
contrast. Yeah.
And a great way to check
So
your
yeah.
contrast is if you select the whole thing, you can go to edit, color, and then you can convert to grayscale. And that's just a great way to check if your
Yeah.
contrast is good enough, because if it all flows together, you need more contrast. If it converts to grayscale and it's still visible, then you have enough contrast. So super easy way to
Yeah.
check that in Illustrator, and then you can just undo back to your colors.
Yeah, sometimes I do start with grayscale if it's a really complex piece and I don't know what colors to choose because there are too many colors that I could possibly put there. So I just start with grayscale in that situation. But here, there is no need. There is not a lot of colors. So now for contrast, I want to use a color that's not traditional Valentine's Day. So I'm going to use a green because green looks great with pink and red, and it makes it look fresh and fun. And I don't know, I just like it.
Yay.
And for a little guy here, it's chocolate, so it has to be brown.
Are you a dark chocolate person? Are you like a milk chocolate? What kind of chocolate are you?
Dark. The darker, the
Okay.
better. But this guy, he's gonna have to be a little bit lighter because I want to see the light shining on it. And the darker it is, the less I see that. So I'm gonna make the brown kind of like a milk chocolate.
Yes. And chat, of course, that is an opportunity for us to have another poll. We want to know, do you like milk chocolate? Do you like dark chocolate? Or we're going to throw in the wild card of white chocolate. Do you
White
like white
chocolate.
chocolate? So, chat, go ahead and vote in the poll over on YouTube. If you're on Behance, you can hop over on YouTube and then come back to Behance if you want. But we do have a poll up. Let's talk about chocolate.
Yeah, so we're gonna do his eyes and mouth be white chocolate, so it's gonna be of white color. But you see that his mouth is like a stroke, and I need to convert that into a shape. So let me see if my Teams is gonna let me go. So yeah, so you go to Object, and you go to Path and Outline Stroke, and now you have shape. That's not a stroke, so if you scale, it's not gonna change the size in a weird way. It's gonna be however you want to be. And I'm going to select all of it and use the same off-white I already used for the throw candy, just to stay with concise colors.
Yep.
And now I gotta do Pathfinder on it too, because you see you have this on top and we have the eye on top, but I need to be cut out. So I'm not gonna do minus from, I'm gonna do divide so that, oops, I always forget it groups it. So now when you move it, there's a little space for it.
Yep. And the reason that we're doing that is because we're going to be using an inflate effect, which we know that we're going to be using. And the inflate effect is basically like pumping up each chamber of your art. So instead of having it punched out, we actually want it to be its own chamber. Like think about like a pool floaty. We want it to be its own chamber to push air into that so that it all has a 3D effect.
Yeah, it's like making a really complex balloon.
Yes.
I'm gonna copy my board, and it's gonna tell me that locked objects are not gonna be moved, and that's fine because that's what I want. And I'm gonna copy it again because I should have done this before, guys. So I'm one of those that likes to have several copies as I work along. And so I want to have this board here is going to be used for the 3D. This board here is going to be used for, the flat color. And I'm going to make another board here where I just do the line work. So this one I'll delete because I just want to see my process and my progress at the same time. So I should have just left this as a outline,
Yep. Just to see the steps so you can kind of go back and see.
Also, if you're creating a project that you want to be sharing or for a client or because you're pitching it or because you want to put on your portfolio, it's really important to show your process. And this method of doing things facilitates seeing all your process. So you can just, save the board. You don't have to be like, in what layer was my other stuff? And you have 100 layers and they're all off and you don't know where
and
it was.
If you're watching, you know that we're going to 3D stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, there's about 20 minutes left. I'm so stressed. No, 3D is so easy. You can do it in just a few minutes. So don't be scared. Don't be stressed, chat. Everyone's chill here. We are going to show you, and it is going to be very quick, and then it will allow you to experiment and spend more time if you want to in the future here. Are we almost ready to move into 3D, Mickt? I think that we are, right?
We're going to do now. We're going to do that right now.
Yes.
So we're going to make sure that all our different objects are grouped. So this is one thing, so it's grouped. This is one thing, so it gotta be grouped. And this is one thing, so it gotta be grouped. So I just click and drag and click group or Control G, I guess. Command G or Control, I use Command G. Yeah, Control G. And then you group it. Why? Because I want the 3D part of the software to understand that all the effects are going to be applied the same way to all these objects equally. I still want all the objects to be in the same scene, but they don't have the same effect. So this one has one effect, this other one has an effect. Also, I want to be able to create multiple copies of these and then, resize and move the angle. And for that, it gotta be its own thing. If it's all grouped together, it's just not gonna work because it's gonna understand that this is all one big thing. Okay, so now let's make sure that we create our composition. I want this lettering here to be in the middle. This is like the balloons that are floating in our scene. So I am gonna go here, 3D and materials, this window. And if you don't see it, just go to window on the top and 3D and materials is right under there. I'm gonna start on object and inflate.
Yay.
I love this. It's so fun. Okay, and we don't need to touch any of this, but we're gonna click inflate both sides. Just if we want to rotate, make sure the other side's inflated. That's how balloons work. So make sure it's round on both sides.
Yes.
And we not gonna use any bevel, but we're gonna use this. And what this does is it rotates. It allows you to rotate. I heavily recommend you to play with this. And when you're moving this around, just really pay some attention to see what it does to your object. If you just do this, oh my God, what happened? What did I do? But if you move slowly, you might find that right angle that you want. So that's what I'm going to do right now.
Yep, and you can do it there in the panel, and you also can grab, you see that circle in the middle?
Yeah.
You can grab either axis, or if you grab in the middle, you can actually live rotate kind of any direction from the middle, or you can rotate left and right to kind of find the right angle. But sometimes it is confusing to like, where am I grabbing this and where am I rotating it? And so using the sliders is a really great way if you're trying to kind of figure it out.
I think if you're learning, it's a good way to understand what each axis does. Because it really took me some time to understand. It's really just trying to mimic the real world. So
yes,
if you think of it that way, it's going to become easier. Okay, so now let's go to materials. Just click here. And we're going to be using the default material. We have all these other materials, but I really don't need them because the default is pretty good. I'm not going to lie. Default's pretty good. So we're going to scroll down and we are going to turn under base properties. We're going to turn the metallic all the way up. And we're going to turn roughness all the way down. Not completely down, but just because this is I want to mimic a metallic balloon, right? So if you look here on our piece, it looks like those metallic balloons.
Yes, and those are not rough.
That, yeah, they're not rough. I'm gonna put some roughness. I don't like removing it completely. This is what I learned that works at least for what I like. And then this is good enough. Now we're gonna go to lighting. And under lighting, this is really fun. So I always do top left. If I, don't need to think too much, top left is kind of standard light. And here you see a really simple representation of your object on the plane. So if you move this little dot, you can see that it's changing the light, the way it shines on your object.
It's really cool how you can see that in real time.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of newer because I remember using this tool without this like it had the visualization, but I couldn't move it. And now I can.
And you also can add multiple lights now. That is a newer feature as well.
Yeah.
If you click on that little plus underneath, you can add other lights if you want to have like a cool, moody, like blue and red from one side and the other. You can add as many lights as you want and then just keep dragging them around until you find what's right for you. So maybe your light isn't hitting exactly where you want it. Just add another light.
Yeah, so I don't need that right now. So I'm going to be doing just that one light and I want it to be white. Because if you change the color of the light, it's going to affect the overall color of your object, specifically if your light is really intense. So, and I want my light to be intense, so let's just bring intensity up. If you change the rotation here, it's pretty much going to be changing what you already set up here. So it's just a different way to control the same thing, I think. So I don't really touch that if I don't need to, but I'm going to increase my ambient light down here, intensity of the ambient light. And this light is different than the light up top. The light up top is a more direct, hard light. And this one on the bottom is a ambient light. So imagine if you're in a room, you might have like a lamp right next to you here, but how well lit is the room overall? So there are two lights working here at the same time. And the more intense it is, the brighter it's going to be, the lighter the colors are going to be, and the less intense, the darker it's going to be, because it means the room is not very well lit. All right. Yeah. So I am going to click here now because I'm happy with what I have right now and I want to see what it looks like. And this is the render with ray tracing tool. If you click the little arrow, it's going to show you this ray tracing and you can turn that on and you can change the quality, but low quality is really good, so I'm not going to touch that. And I'm going to click render.
Yeah, if you want to do a high quality render, it's going to render like you can do shadows, you can do bouncing, you can do all kinds of light stuff. But when you do high quality render and you hit that button, go make some coffee, start your laundry. The high quality ray tracing does take a hot second, but the result is absolutely insane. And can we zoom in on the side of the end there? I kind of want to just show the difference between ray tracing and not ray tracing. Uh, you can see the detail of the other letters being reflected in
Yeah,
the
I love that.
shine there. And do you know what ray tracing is, Micty? Like the actual, like why it's called ray tracing?
I don't know why it's called that. No.
Okay, so I watched a video about video games and ray tracing in video games. Basically, what it's doing is it's taking where the light rays would bounce and tracing the paths of where the light rays are bouncing, and then giving you higher fidelity because it's saying, hey, if this light is hitting this object at this angle with this level of metallicness, then that light will continue to bounce. And it's
Mm-hmm.
basically, instead of just hitting that light and stopping, it's tracing all of the rays to continue the light bouncing. I thought, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense why it's called ray
That makes so
tracing.
much sense. That makes sense. It's everything about light, right?
Yep.
So, um, I am not going to turn this off because it looks pretty good. And I've been working with this. Just hit save. If you're doing that right now, please
Yeah.
hit save.
Yes. Yes.
And it hasn't been a problem. If my ray tracing is on low quality, it already looks this good. It doesn't, I've never had a problem with that. So of it slowing down my machine, I mean. So I'm gonna do the other one right now. I'm gonna do the little twirl candy and I'm gonna make it 3D. But this one, we're not gonna inflate that one. We're gonna use extrude and you can see what it looks like. Woo, pretty fun. So let me try to make the angle I want from here. Very easy. I think it's a little bit too thick, so I'm gonna turn the depth to maybe 40, so it's thinner. I could have done twist. I tried that once here. It makes it more
Yes.
fun.
So basically,
Um,
the twist is going to take your depth, and at each level of that depth, it is going to twist by a certain amount at each one of those levels as it continues on down. And yes,
Whoa.
adding a bevel will help you to make it a little bit more shiny, especially for a balloon effect.
Yeah, so this is what I'm gonna talk about right now. We're turning on bevel and we're gonna do the bevel round. That way you see you have the little detail between each color. You can adjust the width here more. Just let me show you. There's a little bit too much for what you want. And you can adjust the height. And you can also repeat it, but we don't need any
Ooh.
of that.
Oh, that texture when you repeated it, like I just thought about like having this candy and it made me feel really gross. It's too much texture.
It's not candy you want to have.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna bevel both sides just in case I want to turn it, and you want to make sure the other side has the same effect. So for custom rotation, I think I already rotated it how I want. I'm just gonna do it like this because I want to make sure it's floating. Oh, we also have a perspective tool here. Look at that. Woo. So I
Yes, and
used that in the
perspective,
past.
yeah, is going to change the way that you're looking at it. So it's not necessarily rotating it, but it's changing your view angle of that object.
Yeah, so just remember why you think your nose looks always so big when you're on your phone camera. It's because that camera is really close to you.
Yes.
So it kind of creates a similar effect here, but we don't need that. We can make something that looks really three-dimensional without that. It's pretty crazy. I'm gonna use the same effect here under the same material under materials, but I'm gonna make sure it has some roughness and some metallic. I don't want it too metallic,
Yes, we
and I
want it
don't want it
like
too rough.
pre us eating the candy. We don't want it to be like we like put it in our mouth and then spit it out. We want just a little bit of shine,
Yeah,
not a
and
slime.
yeah, because it actually does look metallic the higher you go here. But if you use it on the low setting, It just adds some shine and it doesn't look metallic, but it's useful for several other materials if you're trying to mimic them.
Yep.
Here I'm gonna do top left light as well, because although these items are not the same, they are in the same environment together, right? So the light should be hitting them in a similar way. And you can see my little ball here. It's like, oh, because we twisted our object before. So that's why this looks like that. Don't be afraid. You can just move it around and see how it hits your object in real life. I mean, in real time. I mean, it is real life. It's real digital life. I'm gonna make my ambient light a little bit more intense. And I'm gonna hit render. And you see that it has some shine here. So if I, depending on how much, gotta select it. Depending on how I rotate this object, it's gonna shine in different spots.
Yep.
You know? So let me go over to materials because I want to see some shine. And then I can maybe add some shine. Let me play with this a little bit. See, the shine kind of disappeared.
Yep. And as we play around with this, chat, we got about 10 minutes left in the stream. So we're going to pull it all together here. But again, if you're working on your own sketches, on your own pieces, you can just follow along and play with these settings. You may need to augment them to what you're trying to create. But 3D in Illustrator is super easy for you to start with your sketch, use the pen tool, and then use the inflate, use some of the extrude, maybe even use the plane tool to get some really cool effects here in Illustrator without having to go to any other programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I just copy and paste. Now is the easier part. I just copy here. And because it already has the effect, I don't need to do a lot. Of course, it got a little bit thicker here. So just turn under object, just turn the depth down to maybe 30. And then I think it needs to be like 25.
And I'm guessing what's happening here, chat, is if you make a adjustment to a shape that is 3D, if you're scaling it, if you're doing any kind of like sizing, what I would guess is that there's a button in your properties to scale the strokes and effects. And so as you scale that, it can scale back the effects. If it's turned off, it will keep the same settings on that shape, even if you're resizing it. So I think that that's what's happened there.
Yeah, that's what happened. But because I just have one that's really small, it doesn't really bother me. But if I were working with several, I would probably want to turn that on. So here I gotta make this 3D as well. So it's gonna be extrude, the same thing. Let's do 40 so it's not very thick. We're gonna use bevel, again, round. We're using the same set of settings pretty much for this little chocolate guy. And we're gonna bevel both sides. I think his angle's fine. I can change his angle later. The materials are going to be the same. I want the same kind of shine, so I'm doing some roughness and some metallic. You see how he added like a yellowish glow here? He already looks like a chocolate bar.
Yes.
It's not rendered yet. It's crazy. So again, top left light because they're in the same room, same environment. I'm going to turn softness a little bit higher and just to see what it does, and intensity of the ambient light higher because I don't want the brown to be too dark that you can't see the texture. And let's hit render. And this is what it looks like. So let me go back. Let me go back and you see as it rotates, the effects also change. That's because the light's coming from one angle. So if it's not showing you the effect that you want, it might be because it's casting a shadow or something, or you need to change your settings, and that's something that you learn by playing with it, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's a huge chocolate. And now just copy and paste. And for this one, I want it to be really tiny. That's good.
And these are still all technically live vector shapes. And so let's say that we wanted to have a little bit of a darker chocolate. We wanted to have a milk chocolate or a white chocolate on here. It is still a vector shape. And so you can just double click into that 3D shape and it will select the source vector shape and still be able to edit it. If you're working with text, you can keep your text live so that you can double click on it and it will take you into that text. So you can change something if you spelled it wrong, if you want to say something different. If you're using a font and live text, it will all stay live as you are working with 3D and Illustrator, which is really cool.
Yeah, it shows you here what your object is like. Um, so you can change it however you want. It's not going to affect the others. And this is pretty much our scene. But to make it even more special, let's add some shadows. And I could add 3D shadows, but that can get really complicated if you have too many objects in one scene. And I want to look like these objects are flowing. So let's make a shadow that is just on the bottom. And we're going to use our good old gradient tool.
Yes.
I drew a ellipse and I did a gradient, a radial gradient. Let's do the two ends gotta be black, but one of them gotta have 0 opacity because we want it to kind of disappear. And then here you're just gonna drag this little guy up top and do, and as I zoom in, you can see, so the dotted line is my effect and the green line is the shape that I made. So make sure the dotted line is inside. And it already looks like a shadow of something that's floating. I just gotta remove some of the opacity because shadows are not that dark. They're not absolute black, you know?
Yep.
And to make it, the final thing, you see I had a previous effect already here. Don't feel scared because of that. I'm just gonna make it a little blue because I think blue complements these colors really well. And I'm gonna click, wait, sorry, I'm using a trackpad, so I do double click, but I think it's right click, arrange, and then you send it to back. And here you have a background color that really makes your 3D elements pop. And it's not like fighting with it visually. It just works really well for all the colors that you use in your elements. And if you want to make this even bigger, because I feel like it's shadow. Yeah, I feel like it's kind of falling in a hole. The shadow gotta be thinner though, because I really want to make you feel like it's floating.
Yes, chat is saying really cute and fun project. I agree, it's so fun. Again, if you want to get started and follow along with us, you can do it down in the description. And Mickt, can we do one more thing here that I want to try in the last 3-ish minutes that we have left? Can we make a copy of this entire artboard?
Mm-hmm.
And then what we're going to do is, let's say that your client asked you for, we want this to actually be for, let's say a different holiday. So let's say that we want it to be for like a summer vibe, like a summer beach vibe. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of the art on this artboard. And then we are going to go to...
Wait, do you want me to select the background too?
Yes, whole thing.
Okay.
All of it.
Let's go.
Let's see what happens, chat. And then we are going to go to Edit, Color, and then Generative Recolor. And this is a new tool. Yes, it's a new tool that's in Illustrator for you to play around with, powered by, of course, Adobe Firefly. And what we are going to do is we are going to present a new color option. And when I told you that these are all still live, that's because they are all still live shapes.
Do you do this one or this one?
Oh, actually, right? Yeah, you can do recolor. Yeah, so that's the contextual toolbar. If you have that turned on, it is right there. So you can just click on recolor right there. And then you're going to go to generative recolor in that little tab. And yes, AI colors, you betcha. And so in there, let's turn and let's just type in maybe summer at the beach. Okay, chat. Chat says, and then Andrew destroys it, kablam. Yes. Welcome to a stream with me. Okay.
Oh, it made it green.
Ooh. So maybe we do let's do like sand on the beach and see if we can refine a little bit. And chat, if you have any suggestions for colors, please let us know for color themes and see what we can come up with here in generative recolor. And what's great is that, ooh, because it is all 3D and all vector still, all you need to do is click on that and it's going to completely recolor it. And interesting, so it's recoloring it differently, I think, because the
Yeah.
3D effect is rendering different in the preview than it will on there. And so I think clicking
Cool.
through, because we're using ray tracing, it's not ray tracing it in the preview. Interesting. So yeah, let's click through some of those and see where they land.
Let me click on the other one.
Ooh,
I
and
kind of
chat,
like
that's a
monochromatic.
yeah, chat had a great suggestion. They are saying fruit
Ooh.
popsicles. Ooh, I love that. I love like different things that you're like, oh, I wouldn't put that in as a prompt. And then you think about it, and you're like, those are such fun colors in my
I
brain.
don't know what's gonna bring up.
I know.
Kind of like this brown here.
Yes, and this is like my favorite thing is to click through these.
I
And
really
so
like that one.
yeah, I think if you click, it's going to like continue to render and do like the difference. Maybe that top right one at
Oops,
the top.
sorry, I clicked it before.
Oh no, you're good. Let it render. Render away. And it is interesting, chat, that
This one?
that the thumbnails look different than the renders, and I'm guessing it's because we have the 3D effect on there. And this is a great opportunity for us to send some feedback to the Illustrator team to see like, hey, I think we found a bug here. We did some crazy stuff, and I think that maybe we broke it a little bit. And so you can send that to it looks great, but we did break it. And so you can send that feedback to the Illustrator team. They can work on it, which is really cool. And you can do that, I believe, in the help tab up there. So Mickt, can we zoom out and just take a look at where we started, where we ended, and all the fun that we had today? And then we'll wrap up the stream and say goodbye to you.
Yeah, this is where we started, guys. Look how sad this is, quite honestly. And this is where we landed. So alive and happy. I love it.
So fun. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Stick around. There is a great stream coming up next right here on Adobe Live. We've actually got 3 more streams today. Lots of fun. Stick around. And Mickt, we will see you another time here on Adobe Live. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.